It's the final countdown for the Rockies front office search. Here's what you need to know about the top 2 public candidates that are in line for a possible president of baseball operations. That's all coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Good morning, everyone. What's up? Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast. It's not officially morning anymore. It's 12:02 here, but it feels like morning because I stayed up till, 2 in the morning last night watching the Dodgers and the Blue Jays play arguably the most insane game I've ever watched, at least a World Series game. That was crazy. I know you didn't get to stay up and watch it because you have kids and a life and other things that you were doing, but you missed a good one, man.
I know. I think I made it through, like Lefty says in the chat, I think I made it to 11 or 12. And I was thinking to myself at this point, let's put the fucking Ghost Runner on.
Yeah,
this is how it is all regular season. Let's just Ghost Runner the shit up, make it a little more fun. And then watching some of the highlights this morning at the gym, all of the warning track shots where you felt like the game could be over and then it wasn't. It's like we've talked about it multiple times throughout this postseason, but just the roller coaster of these games, or one guy in those circumstances, it was a little more of a high scoring game, but obviously no runs for 7 straight innings. But one guy gets on base and it feels like the game's over. If you're the opposing team or the team on defense, you're like, oh, we walked a guy. This is over.
Although it happened a couple times and nothing came out of it. My favorite part of all of that was just the no-name bullpen pitchers coming in. You know, Will Klein, the Lauer kid from Toronto. Like, these guys that we've never heard of, never seen, and they just show up, and it's like the biggest moment of their lives, and they absolutely shoved. That was the best baseball I've seen in a long time. And this is coming from someone who watched the Mariners go 15-plus innings and beat the Tigers, and I was pretty fired up about that. That took the cake. Yeah,
I was going to say, we've got 2 really good, just long baseball games in this postseason. And yesterday's game, did you see the Brad Paisley stuff?
Yeah, he's been involved in both 18-inning World Series games.
Well, and he's sang the national anthem for 4 MLB playoff games in his lifetime. Every single one of them's gone extra innings.
That's insane.
Shout out Brad Paisley.
That's the stats that we need to hear more of, man. That's what really matters. There's one thing, though, about the game yesterday, and we've got a lot to talk about on the show. We're obviously going to talk plenty about the Rockies front office search, their situations, the candidates. We'll dive into all of that as we get going. But there's one thing about the game yesterday that, I don't know, kind of sat with me a little bit wrong. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Intentional walks. Shohei Ohtani reached base 9 times. He was 4 for 4 during, regulation. And then in overtime, in extra innings, the dude walked 5 times, got on base 5 times. It made me hate the intentional walk. And I've never really thought too much about intentional walks because I'm just like, it doesn't really mean that much to me. A lot of times you see it in the regular season. You don't see it too much in the postseason. But in the game's biggest stage with the biggest player, I just don't like the idea of being able to just say, yeah, I don't want to pitch to that guy. Go give him first base. You should at least have to pitch to him.
I mean, I do understand where you're coming from, but they should have walked him a 5th time or 6th time actually, because then they would have won the game if they would have walked him in the 7th inning. But yeah, Shohei Ohtani's a complete unicorn. He's the best baseball player ever, and I don't know. It's tough to say because if there's no way to police it to where, if you pitch to him, even if you had to throw the 4 balls they used to make him do, you can obviously hit those. Shohei's better than that and isn't going to Vladdy that shit out of the arena. Yeah. But, I don't know what you would say to make that happen.
So the way I'm looking at it is I think you should have to – I think the catcher should not be allowed to stand up, and if you were going to police this, catcher shouldn't be allowed to stand up and get out of his crouch. And you should have to throw pitches. Now, if the last at bat that Shohei walked, they actually pitched to him. but the pitcher, I think it was Lauer at the time, just threw him nothing but dirt balls, basically. But at least you have to make those pitches. You still have to throw. Shohei still has to get up there in the box. Like, you have to execute, albeit balls. You still have to execute those pitches. I enjoyed that significantly more than just them holding up, put him on first. Here's the best player probably that we've ever seen play the game of baseball, and in the biggest stage in baseball. And we don't want to deal with that. Let's put him on.
And I saw this tweet. I'm going to see if I can find it again. But the hilarious part about how good Shohei is no, I'm not going to be able to find it. Basically, it's like you're walking this guy for an 8-time All-Star, first-time Hall of Famer, MVP. All the like MVP, all this stuff to get to him and pitch to him, and that's just how dominant the guy's been. And he's been so. Like he's put together 2 games now in this postseason run that are just maybe never going to be recreated.
Yeah,
and
you'll never see
I don't even never. They will never be recreated.
Mm-hmm. It's improbable by all senses of the word. But I just wanted to see him hit, man. I wanted to see him get some pitches. So yeah, maybe like you said, there's nothing you can really do about the intentional walk situation, but it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. You talk about Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts has a connection, surprisingly, to one of the candidates that we're going to talk about today for the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies, if you have been living under a rock, which I doubt you're watching this show as a Rockies fan and not being informed, you sickos out there are usually pretty informed. But one of the candidates that is been announced, publicly at least, we have 2 candidates that have been publicly announced. There might be more, but I think it's probably come down to just these last two candidates. Was actually he was the director of scouting for the Red Sox when they drafted Mookie Betts back in the day. So we've got a lot to talk about with these candidates, and I don't know, man. I'm getting a little excited. I love it because I told you before the show I was very into one guy. That doesn't sound right, but I was extremely into hiring one dude for the president of baseball operations job. But now I saw this other guy walking down the street, and now I'm like I'm shifting a little bit. Is it the meme? Is it that meme where the guy is holding hands with his girlfriend, but he's looking behind him at the hot babe behind?
Yes. Yeah. The girlfriend was a certain candidate, which I think is your guy, but somebody else has caught my eye now, and I'm looking back at them.
All right. Well, we're gonna break down both of these candidates that we at least know publicly. We'll start with Sawdaye, Amiel Sawdaye. He is the assistant general manager of the Diamondbacks. I believe he's the vice president of the Diamondbacks as well. I just kind of did some quick research in case you didn't know a lot about him. I didn't realize he actually went to college as a neurobiology major. So he had nothing baseball related when he went to college. Didn't go for like sports management, anything like that. He was a neurobiology major with plans to work in sports medicine before he ended up switching over to a business major with a focus in information technology. He actually started his career at GE, General Electric, before he started interning with the Red Sox. He ended up getting promoted through the Red Sox organization. He was on the scouting team. He was the director of scouting when they drafted Mookie Betts. He helped build 3 World Series teams with the Red Sox. He was quoted, or someone within the organization was quoted saying he's the architect of several Boston Red Sox World Championships, which I absolutely love to hear that. He's currently with the Diamondbacks, and he oversees scouting and baseball operations. And a quote from Diamondbacks manager Torey Lovullo said he basically took the Diamondbacks from a 29th to 30th ranked minor league system and built us to be one of the top. So just on that alone, just those little cliff notes there, that's enough to get me fired up. This guy's qualified. This guy has tons of experience. He's been around a couple different organizations, and everywhere he's gone, he's won. He comes at it from a scouting and organizational operations perspective. He has experience with the NL West. He's got experience with elevation. I got to say, man, Sawdaye seems like the guy for me.
Yeah, and reading through some of his articles and doing some research on him, he's the guy that I was holding hands with in the meme that I was very excited about first.
He's your first.
He was my first pick initially. One, because my son's name is Sawyer and Sawdaye is like his nickname, or it's like kind of like how he says his own name. Yeah. So I'd be pretty hyped if this guy, he has the same name as my kid. But on the baseball side of it, you know what? Doing research into these 2 guys made me realize I am such a generational fucking failure because neither of these guys like had any, not that they didn't have anything, but like they both started, like he started as, I mean, neurobiology major, you got to be pretty fucking smart, but he's like, he's cold calling companies and trying to get a job in baseball and get an internship. And now he's most likely, if it's not the Rockies, it's going to be hired as a GM very soon. He helped rebuild an entire farm system and took a team to part of taking a team to the World Series 2 years ago. That was, the D-backs are not, and the thing I love about both these candidates is we're not getting a Yankees exec. Yeah. We're not getting a Red Sox, or kind of a Red Sox, but not. Like,
I get what you're saying.
A lot of these guys have currently working for teams that more fit the Rockies mold. So that excites me, number one. But looking at like both of these guys' resumes, all they did was start as an intern 12 to 15 years ago with these teams, and now they're assistant GMs. And like, maybe when I got out of high school, I should have just started an internship with the Rockies, and you would be talking about me being fired this year to hire one of these guys.
The entire city would be just absolutely roasting you.
What a loser.
Yeah,
I'm looking at both of these guys, and I'm like, damn, I should have really just... I should have focused more.
It reminds me of, who's that guy in the NBA, the coach, Eric Spoelstra. He started out as like the intern, way back in the day, and worked his way up to being one of the best, NBA coaches.
Oh yeah, you're seeing that all over sports nowadays. Like, I mean, he's not having a good year, but Mike McDaniel from Colorado was a Broncos ball boy. Now he's the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Yeah. Like, it's crazy how quickly the ascension can happen if you're obviously very good at your job and good at, just moving up. One of the things I noticed from this article that I read, so he describes, this is Sawdaye, describes his leadership style as being centered around making himself approachable to everyone at all levels of an organization, open, candid dialogue, and holding tough and vulnerable conversations. Yeah. That right there signals a massive difference from what we've had with the Colorado Rockies in the past 10 years. I mean, shout out to, was it Kevin that emailed Dick a week ago? Kevin. Like that is as open and quote vulnerable as you'll get when Dick gets bored and gets on his iPad and starts answering emails. That's like what the Rockies front office entirely has. They lack the standing on the podium and answering the hard questions. They lack that accountability. They lack open conversation with the media. And not that they have to tell us everything, but there's so many fans out there that even if they have as bad a years as they've had the last 3 years, they just want to hear you say, like when you're a parent, if my kid messes up and he says, I'm sorry, or I messed up, you know how much better that makes it, the whole situation? Yeah. Hiding in your tower and answering emails on a fucking iPad doesn't make anybody feel any
Taking responsibility is huge. No, I agree. And it's why we always got frustrated with the ownership. It's why we still get frustrated with ownership, front office. There are certain things that I think is fair to keep close to the vest. This is one of them. They've been pretty close-lipped on this whole, front office search, but I understand that because that's a different situation. But no, I read that exact same quote. I also saw a lot of people talking about how good of a person he is, and I just know the Rockies love that. They love to hear the good person. We hire good humans, and hey, I don't care how nice the person is as long as they start winning. So I think Sawdaye is kind of my go-to. Now, it's not a knock against Matt Forman, who we're going to talk about here in a second, but I think just the experience for me and the depth of experience for Sawdaye. And again, we'll get to Forman here in just a moment, but when you compare the two candidates, Sawdaye has more depth of experience from my perspective than Forman does. Forman seems a little more, it feels like he's kind of operated a little bit more in a vacuum with the Guardians, as opposed to Sawdaye kind of jumping from a couple different teams and having success at those various stopping points. So I'm leaning towards Sawdaye, just as of now. It could change, and I don't think I'd be upset if Forman gets the call. But right now, I'm leaning towards Sawdaye. Yeah, wait till I tell you about Matt Forman, because I'm looking backwards at Mr. Matt Forman as the guy in the meme. He after doing a little more research on him, I think it's the guy I want. But the biggest key here is let's state this on the record on this pod. Please don't hire someone else at this point. We don't want to waste our breath for 45 minutes, another 45 minutes talking about these two guys or however long we're going to talk about them. And then don't Rocky us right now. No, please. Okay. Here, I'll go one step deeper into that. If you're going to do that, if the Rockies are going to go out and make a splash and do something that no one is expecting and that no one sees coming, it better be damn good. It better be a guy that we're all like, oh my God, I didn't realize that guy was in this mix.
Yeah, like a name where you're like, oh, now I understand why they didn't say anything about this guy,
exactly. Make it count. That's all that I'm asking for. So, but Matt Forman, let's talk about him in just a moment. We got to hit our first break of the show. After the break, we'll talk about the Rockies' second public candidate, Matt Forman, who Spencer says is kind of who he's leaning towards. So we'll get to that in just a moment. All right, I want to give some love to our friends right now over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR and of the Colorado Rockies. And I got to say, I love Toyotas, but I really love a good Toyota truck. I know you have two Toyota trucks, one that you own, one that's been given to you generously by Toyota and has a bunch of branding on it. But I can't say enough good things about trucks and the Toyota truck because although I don't personally own a Toyota truck, my mom has a Toyota Tacoma. I've driven in Toyota trucks ever since I started driving. And I've also driven in a couple other non-Toyota trucks, and it just doesn't compare. Toyotas just take the cake, man. Those Toyota trucks, that not only are they easy to drive in, they're comfortable, they've got great towing. I mean, you got some beasts in the Toyota line. Yeah, whenever I see another truck of a different brand drive past me on like the highway or whatever, I usually just gas it up and I'm like, no, I'm gonna smoke you. Put you in the dust there a little bit. But even if you're not into trucks, maybe you're like me, you like the SUV route. They've got plenty of SUVs too. I have the Toyota Highlander, or excuse me, the RAV4. I used to have the Highlander. So you can go a bunch of different routes. They've got hybrid, all-wheel drive, so many different choices. So if you're in the market to get a new car, a new Toyota here in this winter, be sure to visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. Also want to give some love to our friends over at Game Time because it's basketball season. The NBA is back. The Nuggets are back. Jamal Murray's looking like the best version of Jamal Murray, and you got to go witness it. You got to go see it for yourself. The Nuggets are a championship team. We've talked about it all off season, all summer. We've got the Denver Sports Podcast back, and I got to talk about the Nuggets a little bit for the first time last week. And I got to say, it's going to be a good season. So don't miss out. Use the Game Time app to go get your tickets for all of your Nuggets games this year because, like I said, you got to watch the best basketball player in the world. We talk about Shohei Ohtani being the best baseball player in the world. Well, we've got one of those here in Denver, and it's Nikola Jokic. Use that Game Time app. They've got incredible deals, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage. They've got seat views, favorites, zone deals, all the good stuff. And it's the best place to get NBA tickets, really any tickets, but especially NBA tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off. Tap Ticket Go. Download the Game Time app today. My brother and I we've been scouring the Game Time app all week. We're headed to Houston this weekend for Broncos Texans. So we've had some luck in the past. We always get our tickets on Game Time, but we've had some luck where we've gotten tickets early in the week, and then we tell ourselves that we can't look again for tickets because we've regretted looking at the Game Time app right before the game and seeing how much less we could have spent if we would have waited. So that's always the way it goes.
We just tell ourselves every year, just wait until Sunday morning. Somebody will get desperate, put them on the Game Time app, and you can get the best tickets for the cheapest price.
It's good stuff. Going to the Avs game tonight using the Game Time app. We're both going to be going to the Avs game tonight, so that'll be a lot of fun. Little Avs action tonight. But all right, Matt Forman. We talked about Sawdaye, the Diamondbacks assistant GM, vice president. Now let's talk about Matt Forman, who was the other name that has been publicly announced as a candidate. It was confirmed by Thomas Harding, who said that both candidates were in town. Was it Sawdaye who's here right now, or was it the other way around? Is Forman? I can't remember if Harding's tweet said one of them interviewed last week and the other one is interviewing like now.
I think it was Sawdaye then Forman.
Okay, so Forman is, according to Thomas Harding, in Denver right now, probably at Coors Field as we speak, talking to the Monforts and company. And what do we need to know about Mr. Matt Forman? Because I know you were doing some research before this, and he seems like your guy.
So same kind of path. Also made me feel like shit about my life, but of course, shout out to him. Hopefully he's a great GM for
He'll make you feel better
Rockies.
If he wins here.
Yes, if he wins here, I don't care where he's at, because our journalism careers will bud if the Rockies start winning.
He'll help us out a little bit.
He can help us. But he started as a sports writer, and now he's an assistant GM for the Cleveland Guardians. Started it with an internship in amateur scouting. And that's where, that's what I love about both Sawdaye and Forman, is that they started in scouting and not starting in not necessarily a front office role, but shout out to Walker, love Walker. But, you didn't start at a level of, he
started in Dick Monfort's living room.
Right, exactly. Or his bedroom or his kitchen maybe.
Yeah, exactly, wherever.
But both of these guys have had the not just front office or trades or acquisitions or this, they've scouted the lowest level of players and worked their way up, and he's been doing that for 10 plus years. And he was part of the Andrew Miller trade in 2016. He was part of the Francisco Lindor trade to the Mets, so he's traded away big names. He's traded for big names. But one of the things that stood out to me is his quote. So he used to rank baseball prospects for Baseball America, which is awesome because you're looking at literally thousands and thousands. I mean, these other sports, you feel like there's a lot of players in the NFL realm or baseball. It doesn't even compare to any of these sports and how many players there are. But where's this quote right here?
Well, it's interesting too, while you find that he's a very trade focused guy. And that's the difference. I think, both backgrounds, both Sawdaye and Forman come from scouting backgrounds, but Sawdaye has a history of more trade-oriented values, whereas, or Forman, I should say, has a history of more trade-oriented values. Sawdaye is more of a draft and develop type values. Now, the Rockies have said, or at least Walker has said, that they're really trying to highlight a GM or president of baseball operation that can manage a good trade, because that's something that's lacked in the past. We all know Bill Schmidt has had terrible trades deadlines all the way up until probably this season. Former GMs for the Rockies have not done a good job at the trade deadline either. So I do think that is a positive for Matt Forman, that Sawdaye, although Sawdaye hasn't busted on any bad trade deadlines, it's just not something he's known for.
Right. So here's the quote. Prior to the 2020 season, he was quoted saying, "The game, based on the game's economics and your market size, which Cleveland's a little bit smaller of a market, your front office has to do things a little different than other teams. Is that frustrating or some way liberating?" That's what he got asked. And he said, "The reality is it is what it is, but we can't change it. So we never for 1 second use the systemic realities as an excuse or an impediment. In the number of respects, it allows us to focus our energy on what we have to do to be the best we can be." And this isn't a knock on Sawdaye, because he's in this is actually, if we built a pros and cons list for both of these guys, one of the biggest pros is that they're both coming from teams where you're not trading, as I said, they're not trading for Francisco Lindor, they're trading Francisco Lindor. And you look at the way the Guardians are built, and you look at the way the Diamondbacks are built, they're not getting these massive high-priced free agents and just spending all this money to create this team. A lot of these teams, a lot of the Guardian teams with the Ramirez, all these guys that they have become superstars through the program. And that's what I really hope happens for the Rockies, is they have two quote-unquote can't miss. I never say that with perfect certainty because it's sports and we never know what's going to happen. But you've already got Charlie Condon in the system, and now you have Ethan Holiday in the system. So you've got two guys that you're all right, these guys should be A+ major league players in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it ends up being. But consistently getting, the Rockies 07 team was so much fun, because it was the Matt Holidays, the Garrett Atkins, the Brad Hall. I mean, you can go through the whole roster. I think they traded for Kaz Matsui and maybe Willie Taveras. Were the only two guys in that starting lineup that were not Rockies at Grand Junction or the Colorado Springs Sky Sox at a time or something like that. And then they obviously traded for Carlos Gonzalez, but he came through the system, played for the Sky Sox, and then went to the Rockies. So not that I don't want the Rockies to go out and spend money on great free, massive free agents, Pete Alonso, and just become fun again. But it will be even more rewarding if the Rockies become a team that builds another great winner. And I really hope one of these guys is, I trust Walker himself to make the right decision here. And then these guys, I think they've got a lot of, they both have a lot of good qualities, and nothing that I'm not worried about either of these two guys. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think when you look at this interview that's taking place, probably as we speak, or maybe yesterday, it feels like, the Rockies are interviewing Matt Forman, they're interviewing Sawdaye, but the reality is the interview kind of goes both ways. Like I think both candidates should be asking the Rockies questions about how much agency they'll be able to have to make decisions. How much money are we going to be able to have? And we'll kind of get to some questions in just a moment. But there also has to be a plan in place. And I'm seeing a couple comments here in the Toyota chat, about whoever from Dinger's Burner, whoever is the GM needs to have an idea of what kind of manager he'd be looking for. There has to be strategy behind all of this. And I think as we start to look at these candidates, both candidates have a lot of success in their specific realm of success. And Scott brings up an interesting question too. Should the Rockies hire both and give them VP roles like the Nuggets did? I don't think they would. I don't think they would do that. But it's an interesting idea because whoever they do hire is going to then end up having to hire the new. What was that job that they just announced they were making this year? The chief strategy and officer, or whatever it was. Chief strategy officer. Whoever is hired as the president of baseball operations or the GM, whatever title they give them, is going to end up being in the room when they eventually hire that chief strategy officer. And so, from my perspective, Sawdaye has the strategy background. He's does baseball strategy and scouting for the Diamondbacks. He's a very good strategy candidate, whereas Forman feels more like a player candidate, like a general manager kind of candidate. So they both have a lot of good things, a lot of positives about them. But I think they're a little bit different in their aspects. So yeah, it would be really cool if they both got hired. I don't think they would do that. I just think it'd be too much risk for the person who didn't get the big job. It feels like it would be a demotion in a way. I mean, both of these guys are already assistant GMs.
Right. They're on the cusp that want their own job. And realistically,
they want to take a step up. Yeah.
I don't think the thing I do love that idea because I think what you kind of talked about in the fact that two of these guys both have at the major league level or at the highest level of the front office that they've both reached, they both have kind of different qualities in terms of Forman being more of the acquiring and trading and that kind of stuff. And then Sawdaye, obviously, the very much a draft and develop team in the Diamondbacks. You don't see them trading for a bunch of big names. But working together, maybe they could form some sort of, seriously good like the Nuggets have. But I think the problem is the Rockies don't have they're not going to pay enough money for that, number one. That's kind of what we know, or we don't think they will. But also they don't have the organizational pull that, if the Red Sox wanted to do something like this, I think they could make it happen. Yeah. I don't think the Rockies are in that category. The Nuggets right now, with the best player in the world and coming off a championship 2 years ago, have that kind of, that they're up a level from most of the other teams where you look at that job and you're like, well, even sharing this job with somebody, this is a great opportunity for me. Whereas the Rockies, I think one guy really wants to try to conquer altitude, conquer this roster and this team that's kind of organization really that's in disarray right now and looking for a direction to go in. It's worth
a question though. I think it's a great question. And I think if I'm the one who's hired, if I'm, the guy who ends up getting the job, it's worth maybe reaching out to the guy who didn't get the job and saying, hey, if you're interested, you've got a spot on our team, Why not? Why not see if they want to be a part of something like that? But I want to ask, because I saw actually Patrick Saunders with the Denver Post had a great article about questions that these candidates should be asking the Monforts specifically. And I wanted to get your take on that about if you were getting interviewed, if the Rockies were interviewing you, let's say you focused a little more out of college and you turned your journalism degree into a likely GM candidate for the Colorado Rockies, what would be your biggest question that you would ask the Monforts? What questions would you be curious about? So we got to hit our next break of the show. After the break, though, I want to get your take on that. But right now, I want to pause and give a quick shout out to our friends over at Coors Light, because Coors Light is the official light beer here in Colorado, and it is my absolute favorite. And I got to say,
I'm going to have 10 tonight.
I was just about to say, I'm going to be at Ball Arena tonight watching the Avs for the first time, and it's going to be my first Avalanche Coors Light of the season, which it's a good feeling. It's like the first beer of the baseball season. There's no better feeling than that. you get to go have a nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light at an Avs game tonight.
Yeah, and actually this past weekend, we ran out of Coors Light at our tailgate, so I had to go to a liquor store and bought them out of Coors Light. I asked the lady if she could go to the back and get some more cases.
Let's go. Yeah, Coors Light, you can't miss. It is the best, most refreshing light beer. It just feels like it's synonymous with Colorado. You think of Colorado, you think of Coors Light. You think of the Rockies, you think of Coors Field, right? And so you just can't go wrong. There's plenty of chances in life to make things better by choosing chill. Embrace that chill mindset. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, right in our backyard here in Golden, Colorado. Also want to give some love to our friends over at Bet365. Because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary, and every single sport is epic. How are your bets doing right now? You doing college football, NFL?
Not good.
Not good.
Not good. I've had to call. Yesterday was the sports equinox, so Bet365 offered a 50% profit boost on every sport. So got to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Did any of those hit? Nope.
But it was a good time.
Yeah, I was actually I was a 5-yard reception away from a Commanders, I almost said Redskins, Commanders running back away from hitting that parlay. In the Dodgers Blue Jays game, I put some stock into George Springer, which was unfortunate because he went out early. And then I also had, dude, the Blue Jays are so fun to bet on, but so hard because any of those dudes in a night's going to have 6+ runs, hits, and RBIs, which is one of my favorite things to bet on in baseball. But you just don't know who it's going to be. One night it's Kirk, one night it's Clement, one night it's Springer, one night it's Vladdy. It's just go. And now they got Bo Bichette back. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I actually, and we'll talk about this later. But there's some interesting managerial decisions in that World Series. But yeah. Use that code DNVR365 when you're on the Bet365 app. They've got so many cool things like the bet and get offer, first bet safety net offer, early payout offers, so many cool stuff. If you want to use that Bet365 app, use that code DNVR365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
But the early payout offer is great in college football because the team gets up 17. I've had 2 different parlays hit where I still would have won the parlay, but I didn't have to sweat the third and fourth quarter because they got up 17-0 or 20-3 or whatever, and they just cash it out, and you can worry about the other legs.
Take your winnings and move on. All right, this is a perfect little segue because we're going into our mailbag show as well. So we got some questions from you guys. I think some of you in the chat actually submitted questions on Twitter. We're going to get to some of those here in just a moment. But I asked you before the break if you were getting interviewed by Walker, Monfort, Dick Monfort, whoever's in that interview room to be the next president of baseball operations of the Colorado Rockies. What's the big thing you're asking? What's the big question and questions you're asking?
So one question, this is kind of an out of the box question, but I would be very curious to hear the answer from the Monforts. This is kind of coming from like the inner Rockies fan in me, but I'm going to pretend that I am actually trying to take this job. Is I would ask them respectfully, because you can't, if you ask this like an asshole, you're probably not getting the job. But basically I would kind of ask them like, what in your eyes went wrong the past 3 years? And did that stem, 7-8 years of bad drafts in 2018-19, missing on first round picks, a lot of the issues that we've talked about in this podcast. But my main question would be like, what do you think went wrong these past 3 years? And then how can I, what can I use my skill set, whether it's Sawdaye, Forman, name candidate X, how can I use my skill set to fix that? Because if they think a certain thing went wrong where I don't, if they've done a good amount of research into the Rockies and, being in the MLB, you kind of know what's going on with other teams, especially in the front office. But if you have a completely different view on what went wrong the past 3 years and really 7 years since they made the playoffs in 2018, then you feel like your owner, your new boss does, that would give me some pause on taking the job of like, I think that this and this and this went wrong. There's basically, from what we know as Rockies fans and media, are just taking this player wasn't good and this player wasn't good. No, it was way more than that. That would kind of scare me and be like, okay, they're still not owning up to, and like I said, this is a little Rockies fandom in me from what we've seen and heard, or lack of what we've seen and heard from them the past couple of years. But I would want to see like how I would go about fixing what they thought was the problem is, and ideally what they think the problem is. If you know enough about the Rockies, you know that you can fix that certain problem, but you want to be aligned in that realm.
Well, and also, if the answer is different than what you expect, if Walker and Dick Monfort respond and say, this is what we think was wrong, this is what we think caused us to have the struggles that we've had over the last 7 years, and it's different than what you were expecting them to say, you could then ask and say, well, why do you think that? Like, how, is there more information that the fans don't know about that I don't know about? Because at the same time, I know we're not behind closed doors. I know we can give our best guess to say, that we think the reason that the Rockies signed Chris Bryant was because Dick Monfort, wanted to replace Nolan Arenado as the face of this franchise, and he didn't really look at the actual stats and the scouting of Chris Bryant. He just cared about the money side of it. Like, that's easy for us to say as fans, and I think that's probably what happened, but we weren't there behind closed doors. We don't know all of the layers to that. So if you're in the interview room, you can actually ask those questions and say, hey, what happened? Like, what caused these things to kind of snowball to where we are today as, one of the worst teams in the history of baseball. And it can give you some context to allow you to make those decisions in the future. I think that's a great question. Obviously the easy one is, how much money are we going to have to work with? How much agency am I going to be able to have to make decisions? I see a couple people in the chat saying that, Burge says, how much money and other financial resources are you going to give me, and what to do what needs to be done? Scott says, I would ask, how much say do I have regarding how much decision influence will you try to hold? It's the same idea. I think those are the big questions. I think you can get a little more specific too. I think you can ask the specifics about, like, what type of legal powers do we hold over the Chris Bryant situation contractually? Like, what are your plans for, approaching free agency? How much money are we willing to allocate to all these other areas in scouting and analytics and data and all of those kind of things? So, but I like I said, I don't think this is going to be a one-sided interview. I think a good interview, a good candidate, and I think both these people are going to be asking a ton of questions. They're going to be interviewing the Monforts just the same as the Monforts are interviewing them. And by the way, if you guys want to kind of dive a little deeper into this talking point, Patrick Saunders did have a great article where he posed some of these questions in depth as well. So check that out as well. But either way, I mean, there's big questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we'll get some answers to them soon. Yeah.
And if you could figure out, like, whatever I've kind of learned, and we've kind of learned in being in this job with the Rockies specifically, that you can't really take what they say and necessarily believe it.
Sure.
Like, I think that's a fair
Take it with
statement.
a grain of salt.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully in these interviews, they're not doing that same thing, but along the lines of the questions we just talked about, it would be nice to find out if the Monforts themselves have an organizational philosophy that's not just, we're a draft and develop team because we can't get people to come here because it's ALLCITY. Like, it'd be nice to see if you could be like, if maybe secretly, Dick Monfort and Walker coming into this job are like, no, we want to go get the Pete Alonsos. And I keep using that name, but it's just like,
we're willing to attack free agency.
Yeah, we're willing to attack free agency and spend X amount of dollars to get a couple of guys that maybe change the franchise trajectory quicker than, a GM that's looking at this roster and looking at the entirety of it and saying, I need 4 to 5 years. And that's kind of another question too, is what if you envision, if I'm sitting there talking with Walker Monfort, I want to win you a World Series. What year do you envision us competing in? Because if it's 27, 28, you have a different view on how you attack this situation than if it's, hey, I'd like to just turn this thing around the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. Then when Ethan Holiday is supposed to be a major leaguer and we have Charlie Condon and we build up a few of these pieces, we have some pitching prospects come up that we really like right now. I want to compete in 29 or 30. It changes, maybe that makes you out on the job. Maybe you don't want to slow rebuild like that. You have an idea of how you want to do it right away. But also it gives you an idea of maybe some job security and like, hey, you're taking this process to interview and hire me. That they want to win by 2030. So you have some time to figure out how you're going to make that happen in 5 years versus 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And Scott says, how many people can I fire?
They've pretty much done all that, right?
Give or take. Yeah, I agree. Also, the Rockies never fire people, so you'd have to phrase it differently. How many people can I tell they need to retire or resign?
Yeah,
is a better way of putting it.
How many people can I force resign?
Yeah, exactly. Early retirement offers coming up. No, I do think that the underlying part of that, though, actually has some truth to it. How much say do I have in building this organization, the front office organization? How much control do I have over that? How much control do I have over the managerial search, which I think they'll have 90% of that control. But, you got to ask those questions. Am I allowed to come in and say, and kind of audit this front office and say, yeah, this person's not doing what I would want them to do. This person's not who I would want, or I have someone better than this person. I'm going to bring them in. Those might be some tough conversations that I don't know if the Rockies want to have. The Monforts, they run this Major League Baseball organization as if this is their mom and pop business. And I respect the values that the Monforts have as a business owner. I can appreciate that. I would hope that, if our DNVR Rockies show dropped below threshold on views for, a certain amount of time, that we wouldn't get fired right off the spot. I respect a company that can commit to their players, but at the same time, DNVR Rockies is not a Major League Baseball organization. It's a different context. It's a different medium. And so I think the Monforts specifically need someone who's willing to come in and say, hey, look, I can be a good person. I can be a good communicator. I can do all of these things, these values, but I also need to run this like a Major League Baseball organization. And there might be some tough conversations that I have to have. So those are great questions. I think those are all really important stuff. Speaking of questions, I think this is you were talking about the longevity of how long until we think we can be competitive again? Well, that's a perfect segue into our mailbag segment. Because we actually got a question about that. Paul Norman on Twitter said, so coming off an appalling season, playing in a tough division, owning a depleted farm system, and a rebuild starting at front office, when can we realistically expect to see the Rockies become a winning baseball team again? We've talked about it a little bit here on the show, and we've always kind of glossed over it a little bit. But I think if we look at the different variables in place with the new front office coming in, I had said it, I think last week, I think it's going to take at least a couple years minimum to just fix the problems that have already been put in place. You have one of the worst farm systems in baseball right now. You don't have a lot of money to work with to go and flip that into something better. You don't have any drafts anymore, top 5 draft picks anymore to fix that. Now the Rockies next year and beyond are going to be a 10 or less, or 11th draft pick or less. It's going to take at least a couple years to dig yourself out of this embarrassing hole that the Rockies find themselves in. But I think once you can get yourself out of that hole, it's anybody's game at that point. We've seen the Royals turn around from being a 100-loss team to being a playoff team. We've seen the Guardians go from being a bad team to being a playoff team. It's not impossible, but you have to fix the problems that are already facing you at 20th and Blake, and those problems are massive, and it's going to take a couple years, I think, at minimum, just to fix those problems.
Yeah, and it kind of depends upon your definition of a winning team. I think the Rockies in 2026, if I had to give my crystal ball prediction, I think the Rockies in 2026 are going to be a 45 to 50 win team again. I think they're not going to be as nationally a disaster. You can get to 45 wins pretty easily, but I don't think it's going to be like a start. Looking at their April schedule, maybe this is wrong, but
yeah.
I don't think it's going to be like, wow, they're not going to be tracking for the worst record in history over the entire season.
They might be like the 2025 White Sox, right? Where they were bad. No one thought they were good, but they weren't embarrassing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there will be a hot take. There will be one team will have a worse record than the Colorado Rockies in 2026. Wow. So that's my hot take.
I would actually be okay with, I'd be hyped if that was the case.
Yes.
That would mean the Rockies took a step forward.
Yeah, exactly. And so 2026 is going to look like that. 2027 is when I can realistically see them being a team that going into spring training and into the season, if some of the pieces fall correctly, I see them, if this is rebuilt the right way or they get the right players in here and the new GM or president of baseball operations gets a year under his belt and then starts to go hard at either free agency or just trades, some of the draft picks that have come up, or they trade a few pieces for upper level, triple A players versus like single A players that take 4 to 5 years. 27 is the year where we can go to games and be like, this team, if everything falls right, they may win 70 games. So still not a good team, 70 to 92. But if everything falls right, you're kind of seeing some of those pieces fit into place. And then 2028 is the year that I would personally say, all right, this is the year where when you look at the standings in August, the Rockies are part of that wild card piece. Yeah. They're not necessarily in it. They're not the Padres of this year or, the Cubs where you're winning 90 games and in the wild card.
I take being like the Marlins where you're like in the conversation.
Yeah, you're like, if we theoretically win like 6 or 7 straight games in September, we might have a shot at a wild card. That's what I see in 28. And then hopefully 29, 30 going on from that. It's like, okay, the Rockies are hopefully going to make the playoffs, and then from there, World Series is, I think, out of even my realm of mind of possibility. But if they can be a team that I check the standings in August and I see them, dreaming of a sweep at in Chicago against the Cubs, that gets them within a game of the wild card in August, that's where I see in 3 years, and that will actually be a huge step in the right direction.
And that's all assuming, like Burge says, that there is baseball in 2027. That plays a huge role. We got to pause for our last break. After the break, we finish up our mailbag questions. We got some good questions in here, so stay tuned. All right, so this goes in line with what you were just saying. You were talking about, what do we expect to see next year? You could see the Colorado Rockies in 2026 being a team that wins 40-something games, which is terrible. Like that's not a good season at all. But if the Rockies, if and when, I wouldn't even say it's an if. It's when the Rockies are bad next year. I hope the Rockies are bad with more of a purpose. It felt like this was a surprise to everyone. It was a surprise to us. I mean, we thought the Rockies, we didn't think they were going to be good, but we thought the Rockies were going to, win a few more games than they did. The Rockies were shockingly bad in 2025, and it opened people's eyes to just how incompetent this organization was operating at, a level of that this organization was operating at. I think in 2026, yes, the Rockies are going to be bad because of the incompetence that we've been operating at for the last decade or so. But if there's purpose, I see Lefty in the chat says the Rockies don't have problems. The Rockies have opportunities. Agreed. If you can look at 2026 as in these are losses that serve a rebuilding purpose towards, we're getting more information on how to rebuild. We're crossing players off our list. Tolia is not a thing anymore. Yanquiel Fernandez is not a thing anymore. X player is, you're making those decisions.
Yeah, Brenton Doyle is our future center fielder.
Yes.
Ezekiel Tovar is our future all-star shortstop.
And you're saying, we don't really care about wins. They would never say that, but in the inside, we don't really care about wins. We care about results long term. That's what I hope to see. And so actually it was Lefty who put an awesome question. As always, Lefty's a pro when it comes to this kind of stuff. But they said, what do you predict the Rockies' identity to be heading into 2026? Using your crystal ball, clarify what you believe their identity will be next season. That's my hope. So to answer your question, that is what I expect their identity to be next year. Again, they're never going to say that they're not invested in winning games. Their job is to go out and win baseball games. But with that in mind, I think next year needs to serve a purpose of we're losing, but we're getting information from every single one of our losses. We're gathering all of this information from all of these losses, from all of these struggles, from all of these young guys that we're seeing, and that is going to inform this first-year GM or president of baseball operations approach to 2027 and beyond.
Yeah, and who he's going to keep, who he's going to trade, and what the team's going to look like.
What the organization operates like, all of those kind of things.
Exactly, because it's going to take at least a year for us to find out. But I honestly think going into 2026, I think the Rockies they've been selling a false hope for the past 3 years. I think they have a chance to really actually sell hope that not necessarily the product on the field is going to be better. I mean, it should be better, at least than it last year. It's hard to get any worse, but it should be better on the field in 2026. But once, whoever, whether it's Sawdaye, whether it's Forman, whether it's GMX, sell that guy that is different from every GM that's been a part of the Rockies for the history of their organization. Sell the fact that you went out and did a extensive search for somebody to lead baseball operations and choose the players and draft the players and rebuild the organization, that it's not going to be the same old thing. And I honestly, like, there's the fear of unknown is a quote. And I think for the Rockies, it's the exact opposite. I think the excitement of the unknown should propel 2026 to be a fun watch, because the past 3 years we've kind of known what's going to happen, but then it's like worse. This next year, it can't get worse on the field than it did in 2025, but you may see some things here and there, whether it's trades, whether it's the draft of 2026 or
strategic differences.
Yeah, strategic differences in how they operate. And we don't know if it's going to be better, but it's different. And selling that hope of a different way to move the Rockies forward, I think is enough for me as a fan. And I think a lot of the Rockies fans in general will just be excited that it's changing paths.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited for that. Colorado Conservative says potential trade pieces. I think we'll learn more about that once the new GM or president of baseball operation is hired, because that's going to be a question that someone, if not me, will ask during their initial press conference of, hey, what are your plans for this offseason with trades and free agency and that kind of stuff. And so we'll get some more information on that. I do think they'll make a trade, though. I think they'll make a couple trades. I actually personally think there might be some minor league trades that get thrown out there. Again, Michael Toglia is on the fringe right now. You don't have a place for him anymore, and he's kind of a bust with the Rockies. You've got Zach Veen, who we know at least the former administration didn't have any confidence in. So, there's a couple, I think, minor league trade pieces that you could possibly see for the Rockies. But overall, I think, I don't mean to brush that question off, but I just think we'll learn more once we figure out who is going to be the new GM. And then Felix, his final question: can we expect a Tovar breakout season next year, just like Goodman? I'd like to see 30-plus homers, 85 to 90 RBIs, and an all-star appearance. You and me both, man. I would love to see that too. I don't know if it will happen. What I will say is, if we can see a fully healthy season from Ezequiel Tovar where he's not battling significant injuries like he was this last year, I think that will at least be a step in the right direction. We know Tovar, he's a plus defensive player. Maybe he's around average offensively. If you can get 30 home runs out of Tovar, that's a huge season from him. I think if he can be somewhere a little bit above average offensively, and obviously we know he's going to be great defensively, and he just stays healthy, that's all you can ask for out of Tovar. He's perfect at that spot.
Yeah, and I know his question's on Tovar, but what I'd like to see this year is I'd like to see the Rocky that had the breakout year the past year continue on that climb, and that's Hunter Goodman. We saw Nolan Jones break out and then completely fall off a cliff and be traded. We saw Brenton Doyle break out, and then, yes, he had the off the field, but we're talking strictly on the field. He was, in August, September, he got to more of the guy we thought he'd be, but it wasn't the whole year. I'd much rather, instead of having another shock of a player, and you could even say Jordan Beck, quote unquote, broke out this year. There's a few minor breakouts. The big one was Goodman. There's a few players that you're like, oh, or even Mickey Moniak or Tyler. Yeah, any of these guys that had minor breakouts, I'd rather see one of them continue their ascension than have some other random player that's either in AAA or that we sign or this or that to have a breakout year next year. I'd rather one of ours actually build on either a decent 2025 or, like Hunter Goodman, a great 2025.
Because, like I was just saying, it answers a question for you. If Goodman shows up next season and he's hitting 30-plus home runs, with a 270 batting average and slugging around the same, and he's in the Silver Slugger, finalist conversation, then he's a guy. He's a guy, right? It's not like a one-off. It's not like a one-hit wonder. It's like, this guy is the future, and no matter what, whether he's the catcher, whether he's a first baseman, whether he's just your DH, you got to find a way to keep him in your lineup. And those are the type of questions I need to see answered in 2026. And I'm excited for when whoever gets hired as president of baseball operations does their initial press conference, because there's so many questions that I have. I'm sure I'm only going to get, 2, maybe 3 questions, because I'm going to be battling with 50 other media members. It's going to look like the Dodgers press conference.
But that will be cool, because even, nobody needs to feel sorry for Rockies media. I mean, you can, because it's been, it's not great. And
it's a long year.
But as much as I love the dudes, they get worn down. Patrick Saunders gets worn down. Thomas Harding, Kevin Henry, all the guys that we love in that box. Like, I feel like they have a rejuvenation too, to ask, instead of asking Warren Schaefer why you lost 13-1 again, let's ask this new GM. Like, there's so many questions and so many, they can say whatever they want, and we have to see it actually play out. But I'm excited to see the media reinvigorated for some sort of new hope in the team. And those guys are all phenomenal at what they do, but they've had to do it for a disaster of an organization. And maybe this signals the change of that, where they can also dive deep into their bag, as the kids say, and get some questions out there that are like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, I'm excited to hear what this guy has to say about this.
Well, and I want to talk to Walker too. I mean, I've been wanting to have a conversation with Walker about just his expectations for the future of this organization. Because from our perspective, it looks like Walker's the one who's kind of taking over for Dick. It appears that Dick Monfort is kind of phasing himself out and Walker's stepping up. And say what you will about the insular nature, the nepotism, whatever. All of those are valid points. We haven't seen anything about Walker yet. Actually, from what we've seen from Walker so far, has been positive. So I want to have a conversation with Walker too when we get to meet this new president of baseball operations, to kind of get this idea of like, hey, what's your relationship with X person going to be? How do you expect those decisions to go when so-and-so shows up to you saying, hey, I want to make this trade, or I want to sign this free agent, and we crunch the numbers and we have the money. What's that conversation going to look like between you guys? Is that something where you're just going to say, hey, you're the one, go for it? Or are you going to is it going to be a conversation? Like, I just want to know some of those things. And obviously, like you said, we'll never really know unless I can put a camera into those conversations when they're happening. But I would love to communicate about those things. And it's the old fashioned way that Bill Schmidt and Dick Monfort have run things has been the opposite of that. I was actually talking to someone in the front office when I was in Seattle, and I was talking to one of the Rockies front office guys, and he was kind of explaining to me what his job is, and he was explaining all the different things that he does. And he was like, and I also kind of am the guy who filters through the media stuff and gives some of that media stuff to Bill Schmidt. And I was kind of asking him what he meant by that. And he basically was like, well, Bill Schmidt doesn't really read, the media. He doesn't watch anything that you guys say. He doesn't really read anything. He's like, but there are important things that I think he should read. He's like, so I'll filter through all of that, and then I'll kind of give some of those highlights to Bill Schmidt. And I think, to me, that just shows, like I said, the different generation of the front office that we've been working with in the past, where you've got Bill Schmidt, who is not really upfront with the media. The only time you ever get to talk to Bill Schmidt is during winter meetings, after a specific trade, or, before the season starts. And that's it. You don't get any other, availability with the front office. You don't have any questions or conversations about that. And same thing with Dick Monfort. And I think it seems to me like Walker Monfort has a better sense of like, hey, while I don't need to talk to the media all the time, I should be a little more upfront and communicative about how we're going about this process of rebuilding this team, so that we build some trust within the fan base that frankly has no trust with us right now.
Yeah, there's only one way to go with the trust of the fan base, and that's up. And as Lefty said in the chat earlier, and we're going to be looking at this all offseason long, there's so many opportunities for them to just completely change how they do things. Not only win on the field, that's the ultimate goal. That earns everybody's trust no matter what. But there's ways to earn a ton of fans back, and they're step one of doing that right now. Or step two, I should say. Step one was having Bill Schmidt conveniently resign. Yes. And now they're going to go hire a new GM / president of baseball operations from not inside the organization. So they've taken a few of those steps. Keep going up those stairs. Yeah, it is. It's things are headed in the right direction, which is something we don't get to say a lot here in Rockies world. But that's going to do it for us on the show. Thank you guys for watching. This has been fun. I'm excited. Hopefully on the next show, next Tuesday at noon, we're going to have some actual hard evidence news to talk about. Concrete news. I hope we just have to do a show like Friday night at 7 p.m.
That's true. You're right. We would be doing a emergency pod. So hopefully you can hear from us before next Tuesday at noon. But if you don't, we'll see you next Tuesday at noon. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast. Have a good Tuesday.
We all silly like the mayor.